starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
First and foremost, thank you all for taking time out of your day to join us for this webinar. I do see several clients on this call today, so I'm very thankful that you're attending. And anybody that's new to Quality Consulting Group, thank you for attending, and I hope that we will have a future relationship with you. I know even some of my clients on this call today, I have fixed your file, so it's great that you're taking time out to help your file future integrity. I want to take just a moment to introduce you to my team. So I have several team members. The ladies in this picture are either my account managers, assistants, or sales managers. A little bit of housekeeping for you. On your monitors in the upper right-hand corner, you will see the attendee interface. If you're listening using your computer speaker system by default, you are listening to your systems by default. If you prefer to join us by phone, you can click on the telephone part in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. If you want to minimize your GoToMeeting webinar control panel on your screen, you can click on that orange arrow and it will shrink to the right, it'll shrink left to the right-hand side of your screen. And if you want to have it reappear again, you can click on it again and it'll pop back out. Kelly Fry will be monitoring the chat section of this webinar. In case anybody has any technical issues, you can message her privately. About asking questions. If you have any questions that you want to ask me, I will be taking 3 different sessions of Q&A during this webinar, and I will pause, answer any questions that are loaded in there, and then we will continue. A little bit about today's objectives. First I'll talk just a tad bit about myself. I will introduce you to Kelly Fry, which many of you will speak to in the future or may have already met in the past. Talk a little bit about our services and products. Understanding the files, folders, and extensions. How to prepare a backup and the frequency. Repairing your QuickBooks file, what to do and what not to do. And final comments and final Q&A. So just a tad bit about myself. I started Quality Consulting Group in 1997. We're going on almost 21 years in business. In 1998, I became I became a Pro Advisor, an Intuit Pro Advisor. And then in 1999, I was one of the first to be certified. In 2005, I was one of the first 64 original resellers. And it's now called the Intuit Premier Reseller Program. So we're still a member. And we have over 5,000 customers that are in the US and in several countries. A little bit about Kelly Fry. Kelly has joined us in December of 2016. She is our concierge sales manager. She will provide you with the right addition for you and your business and at the absolute best price available. She also has a business analytics background, which helps her with that. A little bit about our services. We offer QuickBooks hosting, so you can access your data, your actual desktop QuickBooks from any PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, Android. So anywhere you have internet, you'll be able to get that full edition of desktop. We offer bookkeeping services, which we tailor to whatever our clients' needs are. Write-up is for those quote-unquote shoebox clients. For those clients that maybe put everything in a folder or a shoebox, and on an annual basis, they bring us the file and say, make it all pretty in QuickBooks, and then prepare your tax returns from there. Consulting, we use GoToMeeting, which is recorded, or we do on-site for people locally as well as multiple different states. We train you on all aspects of your QuickBooks and how to properly manage your accounting. And then last but not least is a file shrinking services, which is file shrinking, repairing, not just file shrinking services, file services in general, which is a shrinking, repairing, upgrading, conversions, and downgrading. A little bit about the products. We sell everything into it, so it's not just the products, but we also sell the merchant services and payroll and all those types of services. So anything into it, but primarily we do a lot of the product sales. These are all the hard products. So you have your Premier, Pro, Enterprise, Mac, and then we have the online, which is various levels of online, and then the point of sale editions, desktop point of sale, and the iPad system, which is Rebel Systems. We also offer checks, deposit tickets, and envelopes, all at 35% off, and W-2s, 1099s, and a lot of IRS forms and publications. And they're all available at our qbshop.com. So if you ever want to purchase, go to theqbshop.com. And of course, we're always available. If you have questions about which product is right for you, we will get you in the product that's right for you and never oversell. Now down to the meat of what we're going to be talking about, which is going to be your folder files and extensions. The primary three file extensions that you'll see within a QuickBooks or within the folder that contains your QuickBooks file is the QBW file, the TLG file, and the ND file. So the QBW is the QuickBooks working file. The image below shows that even though it doesn't have the exact extension QBW, the description is that it is a QuickBooks company file. The TLG file is a transaction log file that keeps track of all the changes in between your backups. And the ND file tells QuickBooks, that it's going to open in multi-user mode, or it last wasn't open in multi-user mode, or gives you those directions of how QuickBooks runs your file. Additional extensions is the QBB and the QBM. So QBB, most of you do prepare or have maybe prepared a backup in the past. So any file that you see that's a QB backup, it'll say QuickBooks, or it'll say that it's a QuickBooks backup file, but the extension is QBB. That is a file that contains your templates, your logos, your letters, and your images. So it's a complete backup. It often is larger than your actual QuickBooks file because it has a lot of information that it's wrapping up in that file. Typically, a QuickBooks file has those images and templates stored in other file locations. So your QBB is a complete in a larger file. Your QBM, your QuickBooks portable file, that has less of the, it doesn't have the templates and all of those other things that typically you wouldn't need if you're just doing, say, sending your file to your accountant. They don't need to have all of that information. They're not going to be running transactions or anything, so they don't need all that. So your QuickBooks portable file is about, maybe 20% or 25% of your original QuickBooks file size. So it's much easier to send through a file share service. If you want to learn more of the things, you can always follow our link here. This is going to take you to our articles and more, and it'll take you to where you can understand the QuickBooks extensions. And not everyone's listed in here. There's probably hundreds of them listed here, but there are several that you can go to. Okay, TLG file. So the transaction log file can actually be too big to prepare a backup efficiently. So I have seen one of my clients, their file size was under 500 megabytes, but their TLG file was over 4 gigabytes, which was way too large for the QuickBooks file to even be saved. So what you'd want to do in that case is find where your file actually is, the actual folder where your file is contained in, and I would either copy the QuickBooks file itself to your desktop or a safe location, or take the whole folder. I'd prefer the whole folder because that has everything intact, and just copy that folder maybe to your desktop in a safe place where nobody's going to, access it and accidentally start entering transactions in, or that it won't be deleted in case you need to bring it back over. But when doing any kind of these file maintenances, you want to make sure that you're in single user mode. In the case of copying your folder, you do have to be completely logged out so that the file is unlocked, and it'll let you make a copy of that. But in the case of doing any of these, you want to make sure you're in single user mode. So you'll make a copy of that whole file, and then in the working copy, so in the original file location, you'll open QuickBooks you'll go to that folder, delete the TLG file, and then when you open it back up, it'll start a new transaction log file. You can see in the image here that the TLG is a transaction log file. And in this example, in this image, it's really only 11 megabytes. You have to take the last 3 digits off because you're converting it from kilobytes to megabytes. So it is only 11 megabytes. The file integrity, so properly maintaining your QuickBooks database is important, but what causes these issues? I'm going to start with some of the more common issues and then go to the least common issues, but there's still certainly issues that cause it. So the first is back in the day, and I used to be the same way, as over a decade ago, or even maybe 6 years ago, I would tell clients, don't upgrade right away. Don't, wait at least up to 3 years to see if there's anything like a product feature that has come out that you want to enhance inside your company, or use inside your company. Where nowadays technology is advancing so quickly that I actually recommend doing it an annual upgrade. Maybe not right when the product comes out. Maybe if you have the prior year, which you should have, wait maybe 1 or 2 months until some of the initial bugs of any new software get worked out, and then go ahead and upgrade. So when you go from say 2014 to 2017, there's were several major releases during those 3 editions in between. So it's definitely that can cause some issues. So what we tend to do is when we're doing those upgrades, we again have copies that we're working with. We can see, okay, if we upgrade from 14 to 17, if there are issues, or do we need to upgrade to 15 and then to 16 and then finally to 17. So there's some extra precautionary measures that we take because I've seen so much go wrong in the past. So in the future, if you're not already doing it, make sure you do the annual upgrades. The next is a very, very common thing is the negative inventory. So negative inventory is one of the worst things that you can do in a QuickBooks file. And a lot of people don't know that they're necessarily running negative. Some people intentionally do, but they don't understand how QuickBooks needs to process different transactions within their file in order for it not to ever appear negative. So that can cause a lot of issues. Also, some less common things, but still happens. A fragmented computer can cause corruptions. If your computer is fragmented, QuickBooks can't run efficiently, and that can cause issues. Duplicate list elements. This can happen when you're doing that big jump from upgrading. I've seen that in examples, say 2014 to 2017. That can certainly cause some errors. Corrupted transactions, corrupted users. So you can have some users that, for whatever reason, the encryption breaks in their control, and they might have just really either weird windows that they can't access, or just some bizarre behavior. So all the users except the administrator can be recreated. You can try recreating those users within the file to see if that fixes their issue. Sometimes that works. And then also sometimes when you're running on either a peer-to-peer network or a server peer network where a person is saving a transaction and maybe their computer for whatever reason shuts down, maybe they have an issue, and maybe only part of that transaction was saved. That can be an issue as well. I'm going to go next into preparing a proper backup and then the frequency of that. So I'll do a live backup, but I'm also going to go through the steps in here as well, so visually you can see it. First and foremost, make sure that you are in single user mode. It's extremely important. Otherwise, you're not going to get the best database review. You'll then click on File, Backup Company, and then create a local backup. Next screen is very important that you click on the Options button. Once in the Options button, you're going to choose the location of where you want to save that backup. It's really important that either you have a server where you have an IT company that is backing up folders off-site, or that if you don't have that, where you do have like a server environment and there's not some kind of backup being done, that's off-site or redundancy off-site somewhere, that you either that you back it up to maybe your desktop, and your desktop, if it's not in the same location, that's fine. But if it's in the same location, that you even take extra steps to maybe even take a flash drive, take it off your computer and take it somewhere else. So those are the primary 2 things in this screen that you want to pay attention to. A couple of the other things that you might want to look at is that you do want to, of course, have and this is the add date and time. You do want to note that is something that you want to have and it's recommended. I'm going to highlight that it is recommended. So keep that selected. By default, it is. And then limit the number of backups to 3. Well, that is you can use that, or you don't have to. You can increase that. I usually recommend 4 backups. You'll see in my next slide that I do recommend at least 4 backups. But by default, it says, do you want to, when you create the 4th backup, do you want QuickBooks to prompt you to delete the last one? I don't like QuickBooks to delete anything, so you can say no. There's an option. You don't have to say yes. So you can say no. So I would prefer to go back and delete that myself. The next thing is online or local backup. Remind me when I close the company every, say, 4 times. If you don't want it to remind you to close, or to back it up, because maybe you're not uh, maybe you're going in between in and out of companies, say 4 times a day. I mean, some people have 5 companies that they're running. You can change that in here to say, I don't want you to remind me every 4 times. I want you to remind me every, say, 15 times. That way, that's about once a week that you're going to be doing a backup. So those are just a couple of those extra things that you can do. All right. So after that, you can click on finish. You don't have to continue on. You don't have to click on the next unless you're going to save to a different location. But if you're in the options, you'd already know where you're going to save that file. Backup frequency, I don't recommend anything less than 1 time per week. And again, keep up to 4 backups somewhere else. Oops. Um, Erase all drawing. There we go. Sorry. And I also recommend when you do your annual return that you save that backup somewhere else. When you're doing your iOS, maybe you have a online form that you're going to save it to, or a Dropbox or somewhere that you have external backup. So you're going to save that when you give that data to your accountant, or maybe you're doing your own return. That way, if you ever get an IRS audit, you'll have that backup copy or that copy of your file with your tax returns that it was prepared. And so it should match. I mean, hopefully your information does match. So save that. That way you're not giving them current information, even though they're not supposed to look at current information. You don't want to give them if you don't have to do that. Okay, I'm going to go through a demo of your backup. So let me go there. So in your QuickBooks file, again, you would click on File and then Backup Company File and then create a local backup. You'll go through the motions, make sure that your steps are taken, where you make sure it's a complete backup, make sure that you have your file location that is in a place that either you are going to take a flash drive backup, or it's going to be maybe, again, saved electronically somewhere else on the cloud for very safe keepings, especially, in Florida, we're looking at maybe having a hurricane in a couple of days. So you definitely want to make sure that in those scenarios, especially, that you have a backup safe somewhere else. Right, then you'll click on Finish. It'll go through several of these little screens. It'll verify ID, duplicate IDs, integrity. This is part of the whole verify. It'll flash through all these screens, and then it'll go through proceed with your backup. The larger the file, the longer this will take. So if you have a larger file, just give it time. You don't want to cancel during any of these processes. So once it's done, you'll click on OK. It just tells you what the file name was, where it was located. Okay, so I want to go back to whoops. So this is where it's going to ask you if you want to delete your backup, because now I have done 4 backups. So you can say, no, I don't want it. I don't want you to delete it. I'll just take care of that later. All right, I'm going to click over on Q&A, see if there's any questions. Nope, no questions. Great. We will continue on. Next is repairing your QuickBooks file, what to do and what not to do. On these images here, you'll notice that there's maybe some color variations. The grayish, bluish ones are more recent editions of QuickBooks. And then it took me a while to find a file that actually had some data damage. It wasn't much, but it had a little bit of damage. So I wanted to be able to show you what one of the errors might look like. So it's saying, hey, there's an error here. It's preventing you from continuing. So that's when you would go through the repair process. So you get this message. There's in the newer versions, there's a message, do you want to run a rebuild now? So it'll go right from a backup repair to run a rebuild. You want to hit no or cancel. I can't remember what it says, but you don't want to do that. You want to take some steps prior to doing a rebuild before you actually do it. So we'll go to the next slide here. So before you do this, you want to resort some lists. So I'm going to show you this live in QuickBooks. So let's go to resort some of these lists. You'll go to your item list. So under list, item list, and you should really do all of these, but your common ones are going to be your item list. Once you have that open, you'll click on item and then resort list. Every one of these, when you click on resort list, it's going to ask you, do you want to put it into an original order? And what that means is it's going to be either alpha or numeric, depending on if you use alphanumeric, and it'll sort it in that. It'll sort it actually in number and then letter. So we'll click OK. And then we can go into our memorized report list, because a lot of you will have a lot of reports in here. So you want to make sure that that is resorted. Yes. And then if we go back to our home page, if it's kind of an odd place to go, but when you go into the right checks, there's a way that you can open up all your vendors, your employees, your customers, and your other names. And if you do, if you click in the page of the order and you hold your control key down and you hit L, it'll bring up your customer job list. So you'll click on name and then a resort list, and you can see that it's got your customers, your vendors, your employees, and your other names. So it does all those at one time. It's just a little bit easier to do it that way. And then going back to this slide here, once you see that you have errors, when you click on View Errors, you'll be able to expand, because a lot of times they'll be collapsed. It'll say you have X amount of errors, but it'll be collapsed. You want to expand it, and I usually either print it if it's not too many pages, or I print it to a PDF in the expanded mode. That way I can monitor each pass of my rebuild to see if it's getting better, or if it's the same issues over and over again. Then I know I need to do either further things or get help from a professional such as myself. So excuse me. So we'll close before the running rebuilds, close QuickBooks and do the same thing you did as far as creating a copy of the folder. So either create a copy of the file into a safe place like your desktop, or copy the whole folder. That way it's all contained into your desktop before you actually go and do any repairs, just in case the repairs fail or make it worse. Running a rebuild. So to initiate a rebuild, you'll click on File, Utilities, and Rebuild Data. QuickBooks will walk you through doing a backup, but if you want to eliminate doing the backup because you just made a whole copy of the folder, you can do that by holding your control key down, and this is the window that you'll see. So if I go to my QuickBooks and do a live demo here, I'll go to Utilities, Rebuild Data, but before I click on this, I'm going to hit Rebuild Data, and then it'll say, are you sure you want to do this without backing up? I'm going to click on OK, and it's going to go through, and it's going to actually come up and say that I have an error. Typically it won't, but for some reason the sample file is saying that I have issues. I don't, but if you click on it, it'll say 0 issues found. So that's the good thing. Okay, so that was your demo rebuild, and I'll check on Q&A. Oh, doesn't look like we have any questions. Excellent. We'll keep going on. So some of the most scary issues that you might find are an encryption error. And an encryption error can be part of your users. Again, I mentioned that earlier. Your users can be corrupted. Your admin can be corrupted. Those are part of the shell of the company. And it's not like you can delete an admin. I mean, the admin is the admin. Once you've corrupted that, that needs to actually it's beyond even what I can repair. So encryption errors, you have to be very careful. And those are always the ones where if you do a verify and you see those, you always certainly want to make sure you have a copy of the file, because I have seen, depending on which edition of QuickBooks it is, so the older ones, when you run a rebuild on something that has an encryption error, it's almost like an infection. It'll just like multiply. So you want to be very careful. This is just one that I have found from one of my recent client repairs, that there was an odd thing of a customer's masked credit card, which is what users outside the admin would see. They would just see like the X's and the credit card number and just the last 4 digits of the credit card number, whereas the administrator can actually see the credit card, so the actual full numbers. So there was a difference between what the administrator can see and what the employee saw. So that was kind of an odd one. I was able to fix that, but took a little bit more steps to be able to fix it, and it's more of a professional level of steps to be able to fix something like this before you do a rebuild. And a rebuild, I don't even think fix this. There's some things where a rebuild will fix, and then there's other things like duplicate elements that have to be fixed by you. So there are different steps of fixing things. One of the more common errors that I see is account balances. Most of the time, the rebuild can fix these issues. So running a rebuild multiple times, a lot of times one pass does not fix all your errors. I have run it maybe up to 5 times on larger files with a lot of errors that, maybe a backup hadn't been done or a verify rebuild hadn't been done in a while. Then I see quite a bit more than that we have to run it. But 2 to 3 times is not uncommon. You would always want to do a verify in between each one of those just to make sure that it's reviewing, making sure it's not getting worse versus better. If it gets worse and it doesn't get better, or if there's things that you cannot fix that it does not fix for you, that's when it's time to ask us for help or ask me for help. Let's see. And of course, that should be everything on there. Good. All right. So some final comments. So be careful, be really, really careful if you're doing any kind of Google search to find solutions, because some of the contributors may not be the experts. They might have a fancy web page, but I have some people that I've worked with in the past that were quote unquote experts, and I've seen some incorrect information posted by them. So you really have to be careful with what information you take off of Google. It's great. I Google things a lot, and I do find that sometimes you can have an error that has multiple different reasons, and it could just be a general error. It can just be like one of those really weird QuickBooks errors that it could be a lot of different things. So having the 20 years of expert experience that I have, I can kind of read between the lines and know what to do and what not to do. So if it's ever something that you don't feel comfortable about, that's when you usually stop and get us to help you. And then always remember before you delete anything or run rebuilds to make copies of the folder. That is the one thing that I have learned over time is that if you have the copies of all these of their data, then it can always be moved to a different computer, or if something gets really screwed up. I'm going to go to some final questions. Let me look over here, see if we have any questions. Nope, no questions. Awesome. That's great. All right. So just to mention about the survey, you'll be getting a survey at the end or by email. Please make sure you return that to us. We'd love to have your feedback. And then thank you for joining. We are here for whatever your needs are, whether you have services or product needs, we are here for you. So just let us know how we can help you. Thank you again for joining, and have a safe time through this storm that's on its way. And we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.